Hey, David T.S. Wood here, and welcome to my Extra Mile. My show today is with two extraordinary multi-millionaires who are going to share their money tips. If you want to be wealthy, you have to think and behave and have the habits of wealthy people. So enjoy this very short and very powerful show. And please subscribe, put the notifications on, and join the conversation. We're back with the wonderful Jen and Jono. Jono, we talked last time about money, and this concept. Money is such an interesting thing. It's such a great energy, but people's perception and the conversation and the money mindset and what we pick up as children, what we believe about money. I mean, it's such a crazy and you've gone through sort of growing up in a certain way, and to becoming sort of multi-millionaires and creating freedom. And so this is wonderful for us to chat, because when you, in fact, show us out the window, just turn the camera slightly, your dream life. You're talking about how the cattle.
We're actually in our studio at the moment, Dave. We're not in the main house.
Yeah, you're in the guest house, but those cattle is part of the dream, cattle and horses. And so you've been able to, at a very, very young age, create a freedom and a level of choice that
you think he looks young? You think he looks young, Dave?
Not as young as you. I just asked him where his wife is.
I'm winning. It's all good.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into it. What's some of the things? What's some of the hang-ups about money? Especially Jono, what happened with you early on? What were you taught about money by your parents?
There was this whole negative sort of energy around money, and it's like whenever we wanted to do anything as a family, or even not even as a family, as individuals, we were constantly restricted by money. It would always come back to that conversation of, no, we can't do that because of this, of money. And it was money, just constantly, and fights and stress, mum and dad, work, dad used to go and have a few beers of a night and come home, and he'd be, in a mood, and he'd fought with someone at work, and mum would be stressed out. It was just this environment that was just, it's such and so many people's lives are like that. And it doesn't have to be like that. It really doesn't, And then there's the flip side. Is obviously when you get to the stage where you realize that it's abundant and there's enough to go around for everyone. And then when you step into that energy of, yes, we're doing well, but I just want to make more. But I want to make more because we can impact. We have enough, but it's flexibility. But it's like we want to make more money so we can help more people and we can have more impact on the world and make it a better place. That's a fun place to play, but that's the other side, So
yeah. And Jen, you went after a career as a physio, which again, when when we make the choice of career paths, we rarely think about that within that path there's a certain amount of money we can make, and there's typically a cap. All right. So if you're a physio, if you're working in someone else's clinic, you're going to make so many dollars a year, unless you, again, have the courage to change it. But did you realize that when you chose the path of physio, was it because you wanted to adjust or help people? Was there a financial thing you thought about, which was, as a physio, I'm going to make this much money? Or what was it like?
I always knew I was either going to be a vet, a physio, or a doctor. And by the end of school, I could have chosen any of them. And I chose a physio because I figured being a doctor and a vet would be lots of call outs in the middle of the night. So basically that was what made my decision. And then
Jono, did she just tell us she's really smart? Is that what she just said? I think so. I could have chosen any of them. That means she's pretty smart at school. Is that right, Jono?
Yeah, slightly.
I made him blush. I don't think he wants to pick up on this one.
Better than I normally am.
But I don't think I ever sat down and did the math. So I knew mum and dad, we grew up on a farm, a big property, 3,000 acres. And in the 80s, interest rates went to 21% here in Australia. There was a massive big drought. My dad was growing peanuts, and across the whole country, peanuts got a disease called rust and just wiped out whole crops, and that was tens of thousands of dollars for people. So they basically had to sell the farm and move on to something else. And then, so my dad just created a business, carting cattle and he was working and farming and all of that sort of stuff at the same time. But I remember I promised myself I'd have a farm again one day, and my dad would be able to sit on the veranda with a cold beer and watch his cattle get fat and not have to be stressed about money. And that was just a promise that I made, but I never did the math. And so I was like, yep, in school, got to choose a career, go to uni, get a degree. Mum and dad always just said, get a qualification, then you've always got something to fall back on. Just get that done. So yep, went to uni, did that, got out, started working for the government, started working in private practice. And it was like at most 80 grand a year. Like, this is not getting me my farm. And then, so I'll start my own practice where I own it. That has to be better. And, you know, within 2 years, I had it turning over $1 million a year, but that was 800 grand straight back out and 200 to me. But even then, so then I'm like, okay, I'm playing the game now. I'm here, I'm earning the big bucks, but I'm adding up how much I'm able to save and how much properties cost now, because now we've fast forwarded 20 years, right? Property farms are really expensive. And I start doing the math, and I realize Dad's going to be 108 by the time I get this farm.
Right.
So, yeah. So then I had to start looking, and I drive down drive into the city, and I see the big mansions, and I don't necessarily want the big mansion, but I'm like, they know something that I don't know, because their mansion costs about the same as my farm. So I started to do courses and programs, and I wanted to read lots of books. I wanted to figure out, what do they know that I don't know? And yeah, and then I guess that was really the start of the journey. But you're right, Dave, there's a whole lot of, because we kind of get this money story imprinted on us.
Yeah.
And we choose these things that seem so concrete, these beliefs we have about money. And one of my beliefs was that it was greedy to want to earn more than you need.
Not worthy.
Yeah. I didn't have the word, not worthy.
That's another example. I'm not saying
not worthy.
Not worthy is another example.
Yeah. But I thought it was greedy to want more than I need, right? And then one day it clicked for me, and I realized I was being selfish by only ever trying hard enough to earn enough just to look after me and my immediate family.
Yeah.
And when I realized that I needed so much extra so that I can actually go, and when someone needs $5,000, I can say, here you go. Mm-hmm. When someone, when a charity needs money, when a horse needs to be rescued, it's just, yep.
Can I send my 5,000 request in now? Hold on, let's talk about this, because I love this, because Jono, you just sort of talked about that, not worthy, but I mean, when we look at a financial blueprint, it's how we think, feel, and act around money. So, and a relationship blueprint is how we think, feel, and act around relationships. But the money blueprint, obviously the thoughts that we have come from the environment, what we experienced, what we heard, and what we saw around money growing up. That's typically how we learn about money. So, Jono, you talked about not worthy, and we talked about, working hard for money. That's especially older people, a lot of older people. You got to work hard. So get a job and work hard. That comes from a lot of parents and grandparents. You two are relatively young. I mean, well, Jen is, but, but you're young, and you've created this kind of life of freedom. What was the lesson you had to learn? I mean, Jen talked about going out and learning some new things. There's things that wealthy people knew in those big houses. And you could argue now, if they look at your farm and they realize how much freedom you've created, a lot of those wealthier people sometimes are still working quite hard to sort of stay on top of that. And we look at your life, both of you, before you got into understanding leverage income, you were kind of, you know, you're running a business, you were buying properties, but you were still burdened with debt. I mean, there was this thing where you were a little bit upside down. Am I right? I mean, there was a struggle there. So talk about that. So you had to sort of learn it. You didn't sort of walk out and suddenly, boom, you actually went out and you started buying properties, and then you got a little bit upside down, I think, right? Is that right?
Well, we did. We got very upside down for quite some time. About $1.5 million upside down, I think it was, Jen, in the end, wasn't it? Yeah. And yeah, I mean,
I remember meeting you. I met you at that time, Jen.
I should really own this. It was me that got us upside down.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know about that.
He's like the world's most supportive husband, and I have all these crazy ideas, and pretty much he always says yes. Sometimes it takes a little bit of coercing on my part, but I get him across the line. But some of my ideas aren't so good. And
it's the best idea in the world, because what we learned from that 1.5 million of being in the debt set us up to, well, it was one of the main reasons. I mean, there was a lot of learning prior to that as well, but learnings that came from that adversity set us up to, you know, drive forward, and it really did at the end of the day.
And it's the property game, right? And not understanding bull and bear markets, I guess. And if you've only ever been in a bull market, you know, where things are going up and up and up, it's really hard to imagine that overnight things can change. And so, and I guess with success comes confidence. So we'd done a house and land package, and then another house and land package, and then, we'll do an 8-unit development. And then it just was like, having success, and I think we got this, you know, at this. And then had the market stayed bull market, the 21-unit development probably would have been okay.
Well, and one of the most important things in this, in general, across the board, one of the biggest learnings was the value of time.
Yeah.
The value of time. There's, you know, with real estate, for instance, there's a lag time, which, you know, I mean, it's great. You can, as Jen spoke about, then if it's a bull market, fantastic. But then if the market dips and you've got all these, you know, ducks lined up in a row and it drops, well, the ducks get shot pretty quick after that. So
it's the ducks.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, there were learnings there too about partners and partnerships, and we were just in over our heads in terms of understanding a lot of stuff, and understanding when you go into a partnership, you're basically taking on the risk for the other partners as well. So when they just say, "Oh, sorry, we can't help pay that back," you legally stuck with it, and you got to.
Sometimes it's not just legal. Sometimes it's ethical. I mean, I've been in situations where my integrity says, "All right, they've walked, but I'm not gonna, because someone's going to get hurt." So, you know, people like you are going to be more prone to, you know, it's legal, but there's also the ethical part of investing. What's been, Jen, for you, you know, going through those peaks and valleys of, you know, the career, pursuing it, realizing it wasn't enough, building a business, $1 million business, realizing that you had no time now, right? And that you were sort of wearing all the hats, and then going through the adjustment period, and investing, having the confidence, getting really deeply in debt, and now sort of navigating the waters, going through these lessons right now where you've been able to, again, I keep bringing it up, being able to create a life that most people on this planet that I know would love to have your life, based on the time freedom you have, and the money you have, the leveraged income you have, and the lifestyle you've created. The dream you had as a young girl to be able to create a farm where your father can sit on the deck and drink a beer and watch the cows get fat is something that you've been able to achieve at a very, very young age. What would you say is the most important lesson or lessons, and both of you can jump in, that somebody could take away from this particular conversation? A lot of questions, I know.
I mean, I think there was a point where I was just so embarrassed even to talk about failing and to talk about my failures. And I remember, Dave, when I first talked to you about the being a bit upside down after this property, the last property, well, there's been more property since then, but that big failure. Like I wouldn't talk about that. I was so embarrassed by failure. And so one of the biggest lessons for sure has been that the failures are the best parts. And
now.
now, yeah.
When you get away from them, when you look back, oh my God, I'm glad that happened, right? Yeah.
But it's even a lesson to use in the present, because now in my business, I have an idea and I'm like, well, I just weigh it up. Well, you got to give it a go, right? Just give it a go. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'm not going to, but I see people in business have a go at something relatively small and it doesn't work, and they're and they basically want to slit their throat. They say, this doesn't work, this is stupid, and they run straight back to their safety space, and then it all comes to a grinding halt. But failure is just such a beautiful thing. I never thought I'd ever say that, but yeah, that's absolutely been the lesson. But you can't fall in love with it unless you're willing to do it. And it's like now I'm really wanting to upskill my horse riding, and I'm having all these lessons again, because anyone can jump on a horse and ride on a trail or whatever, but there's like everything, there's Olympic level horse riding, right?
Sure. And
so, and failing hurts. Like, you fall off and you sore for a week and bruised and battered and parts break, and it's scary, and it can, you've got this big thing that's not really in your control. So there's so many lessons, and that's the thing with failure, is this illusion that anything is in our control. Because really,
yeah. And on that point, Dave, I mean, so many things, when you ask that question, so many things come to mind. I was like, oh geez, where do we start? Because it all leads, from one thing to another. But I think another thing too is that something that we've got good at over this time period through adversity is through those adversities, solution-based thinking. Right. Like, instead of getting caught in the moment, oh my goodness, this is going to weigh us down, like looking and constantly being caught in the past, it's like, well, it's gone. There's nothing we can do about that now. It's how do we find a solution? How do we find the best possible solution and move forward right now and take that step to the next solution and the next solution, and find a positive outcome from possibly a negative outcome, or from a learning, Yeah.
But it's not knowing that it's going to work. So people don't want to do stuff unless they're guaranteed of a result. Yeah. But that's the illusion. There is no guarantee. I don't know on a given day if I'm going to get on my horse, if it's going to be a good day or a broken arm. Mm-hmm. There is no guarantee. But if I don't get on and practice, how will I ever improve my skill level?
Well, and if you look at horse riding, because I love that, because I like to ride, and I remember, and certain horses you're scared of, and the horse picks up on your fear, and you can tell there's a tension in the horse's body, there's a tension in your body. And, so I think of that, how many people are actually immobilized by their fears about taking that step towards what we're talking about here. And then giving meaning to their failure, because even the word failure in itself, the fact that you can say those words, I love failure. It's like me, I use the word, I love conflict. And people, they're like, what? What do you mean you love conflict? Because I always say what's on the other side of conflict is so juicy. If you can navigate conflict with someone, you can have these juicier relationships because it's so transparent and honest, right? So loving failure means that as you move away from it, you're willing to learn the lesson. And I just want to ask you both about that. To sort of close this one up, the greatest lessons you've learned. Jen, you talk about loving failure. And Jono, what's the greatest lessons about these peaks and valleys? And when you were in despair, there was a moment you were in despair, one thing you both did is you stayed in action. You kept moving. You didn't sort of like just stop and freeze and sink in the mud. You kept moving across the top of it, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think probably one of the things I realized, David, is that as long as you've got your health, if you've got your health, you've got everything you need. It's like, yeah, there's going to be bad times, but there's going to be a light. There's always light at the end of the tunnel somewhere. But as long as you can move, and as long as you're actually got some form of health that allows you to motivate and move forward, you've got everything you need. It's gonna, you will get there. It will happen. And the cool part about it is as we've spoken about before, is the learning. When you look back, that just makes you such a better person in the future. It's like, you're always looking back and learning, but making sure that you're actually learning from that and not turning that negative, into something that's just going to weigh you down constantly. It's like, well, why is this happening? How can I use this as a way to actually project myself forward?
Awesome.
You know, but that's the thing. The key is if you've got your health, you're good. All right, that's my thoughts anyhow.
And Jen, any last thoughts? Look at the camera. Someone's sitting there right now. What do you want to tell them about this? We're talking about money and how we make up, you know, this whole story about money based on our history, based on the examples we've been given, or how we make up stories about our failures and the things we've tried. And most people, again, once they can move into the victim or they can move into the hero, where they use that as a springboard to something else. What's your thoughts?
I think that if for you to have more money doesn't mean someone else has to have less. And knowing that, then why not have more? Why keep living your life with this restriction, with all these restrictions and limitations around lack of money? Why live a life where lack of money is part of every decision you make? Because you don't need to, and you having more doesn't mean someone else has less. When we give up that story, we realize that there isn't any truth in that. And I think just to analyze, and we need to just sit down and write down, get pen and paper and write down. It's like the word work. We have all these beliefs around it. Same as the word money. What are your beliefs around money? And are they true? So write them down, just let it flow. Drink a whole bottle of wine if you need to, and let it all out and get it on paper, and then go back through the list and say, well, is that actually true? You know, like deep down, do you believe rich people are greedy? Do you believe rich people are assholes? You know, when you see someone drive past in a Ferrari, do you go, look at that schmuck?
Yeah.
But it's like, where does that come from? Because he could be like the most generous, kind, compassionate, incredible person driving that Ferrari, but where did that judgment come from on that guy driving the Ferrari? And how is that then limiting? Because there's also this energetic realm that we can't see, and so we often ignore. And so when we're putting out messages to the universe, you know, like, you know, schmucks drive Ferraris, well, more when we say bad things about money, when we think bad things about money, why would more money come to us? Money's not going to want to hang out with us when we think negative stuff about it, right? So what's your story? Is your story true? And then you can actually create a new story if you want to. And when you change your story about money, more money will flow to you. It is the way it works. Sounds a bit woo-woo, but
it's true.
Well, as 3 millionaires sitting together and we all sound like this, I would rather be woo-woo and happy and wealthy like we are than sitting back saying, oh my God, that sounds like woo-woo. So if you're broke, just think about it. Or not even broke, if you're struggling, if you feel stuck. Remember, it's about those tiny incremental steps. It's about that 1%. I mean, Jen said something really important. There's something she didn't know, so she went out and she learned it. She started to look at what would the happy, wealthy people she knew, what were they doing? What were they thinking? How were they behaving around money? What were their thoughts around money? So again, if you want something different, you got to do something different. So thank you, Jen. Thank you, Jono. And I'm looking forward to our next conversation.